My hands trembled as I held the worn-out socks, patched with colorful threads that looked like poorly healed scars on a fabric that had seen better days. The contrast with the gleaming gold keys to the new car my son Raphael had just given my mother was stark, almost cruel. Here, in this boardroom where I'd made the most important decisions of my business life, I found myself facing the most humiliating gift I'd ever received. Tears stung my eyes as Raphael looked at me with that pleading expression, his words echoing in my mind like hammers. "Mom, please don't sell the company. If you get rid of it, I feel like you'll take a part of me with it." I wanted to scream, to shake my 28-year-old son and ask him if he didn't understand that those socks were an insult disguised as affection, a painful representation of how he saw my life: simple, patched up, worthless. But my voice failed, and all I could do was press the rough fabric against my chest, feeling the weight of decades of sacrifice reduced to an object anyone would discard without a second thought. The irony of the situation choked me. On this very day, my 55th birthday, I had woken up with the firm decision to sell the company I built with my own two hands. I was exhausted, physically and emotionally drained after 3 decades battling in a world that had never been kind to women like me. I wanted to rest, to rediscover who Clara was beyond the ruthless businesswoman everyone knew. But there was my only son, the same one who had just gifted his grandmother a $200,000 car, offering me used socks as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The silence in the room was deafening. My mother, still beaming with the new car keys in her hand, looked at me with an expression that mixed pity and embarrassment. She knew, as I did, that this disparity in treatment wasn't accidental. It was a statement, a cruel hierarchy established by my own son. I closed my eyes and allowed myself to go back in time, remembering how it all began. It was the 90s. I was 25 and had just graduated with a business degree when my then husband, Paul, left me pregnant and alone. He had chosen a career abroad, making it clear that a child wasn't part of his plans. I remember sitting on the floor of my tiny kitchenette, my hands on my still unnoticeable belly, crying until there were no more tears left. But something inside me refused to give up. Maybe it was the memory of my own mother, who had raised 5 children alone after my father abandoned us. Or maybe it was sheer stubbornness, that primal force some women develop when backed against a wall. I decided that I would not only survive, but thrive. Raphael would be born into a world where his mother was the master of her own destiny. I started selling beauty products door to door, walking miles every day with baby Raphael strapped to my chest. Every no I received was like a stab, but every yes ignited a flame of hope. I saved every penny, working 18 hours a day, sleeping only when Raphael slept. My mother helped when she could, but she had her own financial limitations. Gradually, I managed to build a small inventory at home. I transformed the garage into a makeshift warehouse where I organized beauty products, perfumes, and later imported cosmetics. Raphael grew up among boxes of merchandise, his first steps taken among shelves I had built myself from reclaimed wood. He was my constant companion, my little helper who, at 3 years old, already knew how to sort products by color and even greet customers with that charming smile that melted any heart. I remember the day I managed to rent my first store. It was a tiny space, just 150 square feet in a middle-class neighborhood, but to me it was a palace. Raphael, then 5 years old, helped me paint the walls, his little hands leaving marks that I made a point of not correcting. Those marks were our story being written. The first few years were brutal. There were days when I only sold enough to pay the rent, surviving on what was left. Many nights I stayed up making and remaking calculations, trying to stretch every dollar to the limit. Raphael learned early on to be independent, not to ask for what I couldn't give, to understand that mommy needed to work so they could eat. When Raphael turned 8, I hired my first employee, Marcia, a 40-year-old woman who had been unemployed for 2 years. She became more than a colleague, a partner, a friend who understood the daily struggle of women like us. Together, we expanded to a second store, then a third. Each achievement was celebrated with a simple cake. The three of us, me, Raphael, and Marcia, celebrating another victory against the statistics that said businesses like ours were doomed to fail. But the growth came at a price. The more the company expanded, the less time I had for Raphael. He started staying with my mother on weekends, then during school holidays, and finally on holidays as well. I consoled myself thinking I was building a better future for him, that all those sacrifices would be worth it when he was older and could understand. It was during this time that I met all sorts of people. Some, like Marcia, were genuinely supportive and understood the struggle. Others, however, saw me as a threat or an opportunity. I remember Roger, a businessman in the industry, who tried to convince me to sell my company for a fraction of its real value, arguing that women don't have the business acumen for big deals. Or Patricia, a former friend who started treating me coldly after my company began to grow, spreading rumors that I stepped on everyone to get ahead. But the person who hurt me the most was Robert, a man I was involved with when Raphael was 12. He seemed to understand my ambition, saying he admired my strength. For 2 years, I believed I had found a life partner, until I discovered he was embezzling money from the company, using our joint account to finance a side business he planned to open with his ex-wife. The betrayal was twofold, personal and professional. Around that time, Raphael started to change. The affectionate and understanding boy transformed into a resentful teenager. He complained that I was never there, that he felt abandoned. I tried to explain that everything I did was for him, but his words cut deep. "You love this company more than you love me, Mom. Admit it." Those words echoed in my mind for years. Every important meeting I missed for one of his soccer games, every business trip that coincided with a school presentation, every holiday I spent in the office while he stayed with Grandma. I wondered if he was right, if I had truly chosen the company over motherhood. But it was more complex than that. I knew that stopping my professional growth would mean financial stagnation, and that could jeopardize the future I wanted to give Raphael. It was a vicious cycle. I worked to give him the best, but by working so hard, I couldn't be present to give him what really mattered: my presence, my attention, my time. By the time Raphael turned 18, I had a network of 22 stores and a distribution center. The company employed over 200 people, and I had become a leading figure in the industry. I won awards, was featured on the cover of trade magazines, and lectured at universities. Outwardly, I was the perfect example of a woman who made it. Inwardly, I felt utterly alone. Raphael went to college, majoring in business administration like I had, but always with a distant attitude. He worked at the company during the holidays, but it was clear he was there out of obligation, not passion. His conversations with me were functional, polite, but cold. He had learned to be polished, but couldn't hide the resentment he carried. It was during this period that I met Helen, an executive at a competing company who would become my closest confidant. Helen was a 50-year-old divorced woman who had faced challenges similar to mine. She asked me questions I didn't want to confront. "Clara, when was the last time you did something just for pleasure? When was the last time you felt truly happy, not just professionally accomplished?" These questions haunted me. I couldn't remember the last time I had read a book for pleasure, watched a movie without thinking about company problems, or simply walked on the beach without my phone ringing. My life had become spreadsheets, meetings, strategies, and goals. I had built an empire, but I had lost myself in the process. When Raphael graduated and officially came to work for the company, I hoped we would finally grow closer. He showed competence, had innovative ideas, but our relationship remained professional even at home. He was efficient, punctual, responsible, but distant. He treated me like a respectable boss, not a mother. The breaking point came last year when my mother had a health problem. She needed to be hospitalized for 2 weeks, and I saw how Raphael completely dedicated himself to her. He visited every day, brought flowers, spent hours chatting, showing a warmth I hadn't seen in years. With me, he remained formal, polite, but with her, he was the loving grandson I remembered him being with his own mother. That's when I seriously considered selling the company. I was tired, physically exhausted, and emotionally empty. There were other people interested in buying it, generous offers that would allow me a comfortable retirement. I could travel, rediscover hobbies, maybe even find a new love. I could finally have time to just be Clara, not businesswoman Clara. But there was a nagging doubt. What would happen to the employees who depended on the company? People like Marcia, who had grown with me and was now a regional manager. Or John, the accountant, who had been with us since the early years. Or the hundreds of families who depended on the jobs I had created. And there was Raphael. Despite the distance between us, he had invested 5 years of his life in the company. He had developed projects, built relationships with clients, and built his own reputation in the industry. Selling the company would, in a way, devalue all his investment as well. With these reflections, we arrived at my birthday. I had decided to talk to Raphael about the sale, explain my reasons, and hear his opinion. I thought he would understand, maybe even support my decision. After all, he could use his acquired experience to seek other opportunities, maybe even start his own business. But when he showed up in the meeting room with those 2 gifts, everything changed. Seeing my mother receive the keys to a new car, seeing the radiant smile on her face, and then receiving those worn-out socks was like a punch to the stomach. It wasn't just the disparity of the gifts, it was what that disparity represented. At that moment, holding those socks, I understood something devastating. To my son, I had become a simple, ordinary, dispensable person. Someone who deserved only scraps, the things others would discard. While my mother, who had been a housewife her entire life, deserved luxury and recognition, I, who had built an empire, deserved only disguised charity. But there was something more to those socks that I hadn't yet fully grasped. Looking closer, I realized the patches weren't random. They formed a pattern, almost as if intentional. And then I saw it. They were the initials of my company, discreetly embroidered with colorful threads. These weren't just any socks. They were the socks I'd worn on my first day of work at the company, the ones I'd kept as a memento. If you enjoy these real-life stories that touch the heart, be sure to follow us for more such tales showcasing life's surprising twists and turns. Then Raphael began to speak, his voice trembling with emotion. "Mom, I found these socks in your office drawer. You kept them all these years. I asked Mrs. Maria, the neighborhood seamstress, to restore them because they represent who you really are. Not the successful businesswoman, but the courageous woman who left home wearing these socks to conquer the world." My legs gave way. I sank heavily into the chair, still clutching the socks, trying to process what he had said. He continued, "I know you want to sell the company. I know you're tired. But these socks reminded me of all the stories you told me when I was little, about how you walked miles to sell products, how you slept on the store floor to save money, how you built all this with your own hands." Tears streamed down my face. "You don't understand, Raphael. I sacrificed everything for this company. I sacrificed my youth, my relationships, my time with you. I'm exhausted. I want a normal life. I want to discover who I am beyond this company." He knelt beside me, his hands covering mine. Mom, do you think I don't know what you gave up for me? Do you think I didn't notice that you never bought nice clothes because you were investing all your money in the company? That you never traveled to places you dreamed of because you were building my future? His voice cracked. I was a terrible son. I spent years resentful, thinking you neglected me. But I was a child. I didn't understand that every hour you spent working was an hour you were fighting to give me a better future. Only now, working at the company, do I understand the magnitude of what you built. He took a deep breath. The car for Grandma was my apology to her for all the years she had to take care of me when you couldn't. And these socks are my apology to you, Mom, for not appreciating your sacrifices, for not understanding that you were always the strongest woman I knew. I couldn't stop crying. 28 years of resentment, misunderstandings, and bottled up pain were pouring out at that moment. But Raphael, I made mistakes too. I should have found a better balance. I should have been more present in your life. He shook his head. Mom, you were present. Maybe not physically all the time, but you were present in every decision you made thinking of me. You were present in every sleepless night you spent solving company problems. You were present every time you chose hard work over the easy way out. At that moment, something inside me broke and rebuilt itself at the same time. I saw that I had spent all these years misinterpreting the signs. I thought Raphael's distance was contempt, when it was actually insecurity. I thought he didn't value me, when in fact he didn't know how to express his gratitude. So you don't want me to sell the company? I asked, my voice still choked. I want you to be happy, Mom. If selling the company will make you happy, then sell it. But don't sell it because you think you're worthless, because you're not. Don't sell it because you think nobody cares, because I do. If you decide to sell, let it be because it's truly what you want, not because you're running away from who you are. His words resonated in my mind. Was it true that I was running away? Was I trying to get rid of the company because I was tired, or because I had internalized the idea that women like me shouldn't be so successful? How many times had I heard comments about women who neglected their families for work? How many times had I blamed myself for not being the perfect mother I thought I should be? I looked at the socks in my hands, those socks that had witnessed my journey from the beginning. They were indeed worn, but the patches didn't make them ugly. They made them unique. Each colored thread told a story. Each repair was a testament to resilience. You're right, I murmured. I was running away. I was so tired of carrying this weight alone that I forgot the weight is also my strength. Raphael smiled, that smile I hadn't seen in years. Mom, you don't have to carry this weight alone. I want to help. I want to learn from you. I want to be worthy of the legacy you built. For the first time in decades, I felt understood, not just as a businesswoman, but as a woman, as a mother, as a human being. Raphael had grown. He had become a man who understood that strength isn't never falling, but always getting back up. That success isn't never failing, but never giving up. So let's do this differently, I said, finally finding my voice. Let's build this company into something even bigger. Not just a business, but an example of how women can build empires without losing their humanity. How mothers can be entrepreneurs without ceasing to be mothers. In the following months, Raphael and I worked together in a way we never had before. We implemented policies supporting working mothers, created a mentorship program for women entrepreneurs, and established an on-site daycare. Each change reflected our own journey, an attempt to make the path I had forged alone easier for other women. The company not only survived, but thrived. Employees felt more valued, clients noticed the difference in service, and the press began recognizing us not only for our financial success, but also for our social responsibility. But the biggest change was in my relationship with Raphael. We discovered we could be colleagues and mother and son at the same time. He brought energy and innovative ideas, while I offered experience and wisdom. Together, we created a synergy neither of us could have achieved alone. Today, when I look at those mended socks, which I now keep framed on my office wall, I see more than an object. I see a metaphor for life. Sometimes we get worn out. Sometimes we need repairs. But that doesn't make us less valuable. Sometimes it's the scars that make us unique. I learned that I didn't have to choose between being an entrepreneur and being a mother. I could be both with pride. I learned that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's humanity. I learned that accepting help isn't admitting defeat, it's acknowledging that we're part of something bigger. And Raphael learned that a mother can be imperfect and still be extraordinary. That love sometimes manifests in ways we don't immediately recognize. That legacy isn't just what we leave behind, but how we inspire others to build their own paths. That cold July morning, when I woke up thinking of discarding my legacy, I never imagined I would end the day rediscovering its true value. Not the monetary value, but the human value. The value of a woman who refused to give up, who transformed obstacles into opportunities, who proved that it's possible to be strong and sensitive. The mended socks reminded me that some things in life are too valuable to be thrown away. They just need to be seen with eyes that recognize beauty in resilience, elegance in perseverance, and dignity in the courage to keep going, even when the path seems impossible. Today, when young women seek my advice on entrepreneurship, I always show them those socks. I explain that success isn't about never wearing out, but knowing when and how to renew yourself. That motherhood and ambition can coexist. That strength and vulnerability are two sides of the same coin. And when Raphael hugs me at the end of each workday, when he calls me Mom with that affection I thought I'd lost forever, I know the mended socks weren't just a gift. They were a bridge, connecting who I was with who I became, reminding me that every journey is worthwhile when shared with love.